Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on December 21st. Thank you for joining. Please help support the work that I do by sharing the links and asking your social media to follow me. You can follow me on X, on GETTR, Substack, Patreon, Rumble, YouTube, Brighteon, and Bitchute. There's many ways to follow me. And if you like the content and you want to help support, you can support by also donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Substack and my Patreon channel. I produce all these videos for free. I have thousands of videos for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall, but I need your support to purchase the products, share the links, donate. It's a great way to help support the work that I do. And if you pay attention, I'm giving you my opinion about what's going on geopolitically and how it may affect the financial markets. I'm also telling you how to improve your health and wellness. So with that, let's begin. I want to start with a video from CNBC talking about shipyards in the United States and the issue that we have with being able to build ships in large quantities. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Please go to my store and get the Max 35 or the Cleanse. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. They're at different price points, but they'll help to boost up your immune system. What this will do is neutralize and improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. Improve the mucosal barrier and help the health of your epithelial cells. By doing that, you're improving your immune system. I've been using this for over 5 years. I take a teaspoon a day every day. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day and then go back to your maintenance dose once everything's all clear. But this is really important to do every day. And it's part of my anti-aging protocol because if you're not sick, guess what? You don't age as fast. In addition, I have very high quality structural nanosilver soaps. You can get it in charcoal tea tree, lemongrass, but also in peppermint and in lavender. Get a few bars for your household, very high quality structural nanosilver soaps to help with your skin, the health of your skin, to neutralize, very high quality. All right, get a few bars for your household. All right, with that said, let's begin.
Cranes are putting down huge pieces.
At this site in southern Philadelphia, $5 billion is being invested by South Korean shipping conglomerate Hanwha. It hopes to turn this decades-old shipyard into a state-of-the-art facility and help the U.S. become a major shipbuilder again. China dominates the global commercial shipbuilding industry, accounting for 53% of global market share, followed by South Korea and Japan. The U.S. accounts for only about 0.1%. China has roughly 232 times the shipbuilding capacity of the U.S. It wasn't always this way. America used to be a world leader in shipbuilding. But with a shortage of talent, antiquated operating procedures, and outdated facilities, the industry essential to U.S. energy security and defense is in crisis.
We really gave up the shipbuilding industry foolishly many years ago, but we're gonna start it up again. We're gonna be making our own ships again soon.
Shipbuilding companies from around the world are vying for a piece of America's shipbuilding renaissance. Here at Fincantieri, you have 6 vessels under construction.
About 90% of world trade takes place on the ocean.
So what's the most challenging aspect in building a ship?
The welding and the construction and the assembly is the most important and challenging because once we've concealed everything with paint and insulation and equipment, it's very, very difficult to go back. It's going to be a mess. There's a lot of catching up to do.
it's a tall order, making American shipbuilding great again. I would rather twist it a little bit, say, what will it take? And if I am to put that into perspective, it takes a world war.
To look at how shipyards are being revitalized, CNBC traveled to Wisconsin's Great Lakes region and to one of America's oldest shipyards in Philadelphia. At this yard on the south side of Philadelphia, massive cranes move ship components like pieces of a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Our glide crane right now is setting the bow of the ship.
Since 2000, the yard has made about 50% of all U.S. vessels that are Jones Act compliant. The Jones Act is a federal law requiring vessels used in domestic trade to have all major components built in the U.S., and the ship must be entirely assembled in the country. Hanwha purchased the U.S. company Philly Shipyard in 2024 for $100 million.
Hanwha Philly Shipyard purchased this property a year ago, and it was a money loser, but they hope to change all that.
The Hanwha Philly Shipyard delivers about 1 to 1.5 ships a year. That is today. If you look at our aspirations going forward, we are looking to build 20 ships a year.
By contrast, Hanwha Shipyard in South Korea has roughly 24,000 workers and creates about 40 to 50 ships a year.
And those are the most complicated and largest ocean-going vessels in the world.
In August, Hanwha said it would invest an additional $5 billion to modernize the yard's infrastructure, increase automation, and expand production. The plan would allow the facility to build Jones Act tankers, export-grade LNG vessels, and ships for the U.S. Navy. The announcement followed a July trade deal that lowered U.S. tariffs on South Korea. South Korea committed $150 billion towards U.S. shipbuilding.
We love their product, we love their ships, we love a lot of the things that they make, and they love what we have.
The site got a boost this summer when Hanwha Shipping, another subsidiary of parent company Hanwha Ocean, made the single largest U.S. commercial vessel order in decades.
We put in orders for 10 tankers as well as 2 LNG carriers to produce the demand that will juice the work here, juice the training.
President Trump has also approved South Korea's plan to build nuclear power submarines at the site, and it could serve as a blueprint for other U.S. shipyards. Philly Shipyard got its commercial start in 1997 and dates back to the founding of the U.S. Navy.
If we get to the point where we are making the right investments, we can build anything here. Large naval ships, we can build large commercial ships.
But the yard, like other sites across the U.S., faces multiple challenges.
People come and go all the time. And to keep the workforce at a steady, solid pace, in my opinion, is the hardest component of shipbuilding.
The New York Naval Shipyard at Brooklyn.
Meet Jan. She's enjoying a beautiful day outdoors with friends and family. She's also managing her type 2 diabetes by taking Jardians, a little pill with a big story to tell.
The New York Naval Shipyard at Brooklyn in its final hours, a massive, sad, and silent witness to a glorious past.
The U.S. has roughly 150 yards across 29 states that build ships. More than 300 other sites handle repairs or are not actively constructing vessels. By contrast, China has over 1,200 shipyards.
We're going to be spending a lot of money on shipbuilding. We're way, way, way behind. We used to build a ship a day, and now we don't do a ship a year practically.
Today, U.S. shipbuilding is largely focused on government programs like the Navy, where half of the fleet is more than 20 years old. Total revenue for U.S. shipbuilders pre-pandemic was $27.9 billion. 78% of that revenue came from military shipbuilding and repairs.
The Navy is built for speed, so their material that they use is thinner than most from the heat, from the cold. That was definitely a difficulty we had welding and building these ships.
U.S. commercial shipbuilding, by contrast, has experienced a near total collapse. Lack of a qualified workforce, aging facilities, and outdated manufacturing techniques have devastated the industry.
U.S. currently have 8 active shipyards, and they are building a few cruise ships. They are building a few product tankers and also a few container ships.
About 80 U.S. flag vessels are currently engaged in international commerce, compared with over 5,500 from China. China has also overtaken the U.S. Navy in fleet size. One reason U.S. flag vessels cost 6 to 8 times more to build.
This should never, ever, ever happen. And this is why I keep on saying it's about the economic clustering. Because think about it. When you're producing more ships in a shipyard, then the peripheral industries in that area will blossom. And therefore, higher GDP. But when the shipyard goes, the peripheral businesses die out.
Costs 2 to 3 times more to operate than their foreign flagged counterparts. But that was not always the case.
To turn out ships at the rate of 200 a month, ships which carried overseas the armed might of the United States to decide the outcome of a war.
At the end of World War II, the U.S. had the largest fleet in the world with over 4,400 ships that carried 57% of U.S. trade. Less expensive competition from abroad, an end to U.S. subsidies in the 80s, and an increase in foreign subsidies hollowed out much of the U.S. shipbuilding industry. China has been the main beneficiary. In 2024, China booked 67% of new orders for commercial ships, compared with 17% for South Korea and 0.2% for the U.S.
What's required is not only political will, but also massive subsidies and, of course, the skilled labor force to build behemoths to sail the oceans. I really do not see that underlying reason for U.S. to bring back shipbuilding to any meaningful extent.
Kyle Purnell oversees welders and automated machines at Hanwha's Philly shipyard.
I started here as an apprentice in January 7, 2008. The yard has grown a lot over them 17 and a half years.
Attracting and retaining talent, he says, is the site's biggest challenge.
Competition for welders is very tough, especially now.
U.S. shipbuilders employ more than 105,000 people in 2023, but a shortage of skilled professionals and an aging workforce continues to plague the industry. One reason, pay. The average yearly pay for a U.S. ship welder is a little over $54,000 a year. Hanwha says a ship welder can earn in upwards of 6 figures at its Philly shipyard, including salary and overtime.
Might look chaotic, but everything has a place, everything has a schedule.
Over the next decade, shipbuilders will need an additional 174,000 workers to keep pace with the Navy's goals alone.
Being able to hire enough and bring enough of a workforce that is qualified that you can develop, honestly, that's going to be one of our biggest challenges for growth.
To bring its employees up to speed, Hanwha is sending its U.S. workers to South Korea for training.
What we're currently doing is bringing American workers also to Korea to learn from our skilled tradesmen so they can speed up that transfer of skill, so they can apply those skills to the building that's being done here.
Other U.S. shipyards face a similar challenge. Italian shipbuilder Fincantieri, one of the world's largest with 18 shipyards, bought its Wisconsin yards for $120 million around 2009.
How many months or years has it taken this vessel to get to the state that it's in now?
We have about a 6-month tack time to get to the start of assembly, and then another 12 to 18 months before we're fully assembled and everything else.
Fincantieri Marine Group is the U.S. division of Fincantieri. Its 3 shipyards on Wisconsin's Great Lakes build vessels like combat ships, mine countermeasure vessels, tugs, and icebreakers for the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. The company also has a commercial business. In 2024, Fincantieri built the largest Jones Act compliant vessel, a 12,000 square foot LNG bunker that can carry 3.1 million gallons of liquefied natural gas. In 2024, it signed an order to build 3 Carnival cruise ships.
Essentially, we're looking at a vessel that's approximately a football field long and about 50 feet tall from where we stand in.
Over the past few years, it has invested more than $800 million in its 4 U.S. shipyards, including one in Florida, and increased its workforce by 850 workers to 3,750. Kayla Fewins is a pipe welder. Fewins helped work on a combat ship being built for the Saudi military through the U.S. Navy's Foreign Military Sales Program. Her mother, Tricia, works as a waterfront engineering manager and has worked here for over a decade.
It's a lot of different positions and making sure that you're comfortable in a non-comfortable position. Like you're in tanks, you're all over the place, upside down, your head's smushed. It's just a really difficult sometimes.
We annually generate about 140 naval engineers in the entire US. You know how many they do in China? In China, they produce 10,000 naval engineers every year.
Other U.S. shipbuilders include Huntington Ingalls Industry, National Steel and Shipbuilding Company, and Austal USA.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words, create your brand.
U.S. shipbuilders face a myriad of challenges, including building complicated ships like nuclear submarines and LNG vessels to inconsistent funding.
Approximately how many millions of parts could be a vessel?
So a bill of material can have 5 to 10 million line items.
But new technologies and advancements in shipbuilding could help propel the industry.
This is a robot that we're starting to use here. Normally when I would weld, I would have to be here with my hand and my hood down. With this, I can just easily program it to weld and it'll basically do it for me.
This is one of our most automated lines that we have here in the yard. It might take a person, let's say, a day to weld one of these plates together. That machine can do it in 25 minutes.
Everything from automation to robotics to AR to VR training. These are different types of technologies that we've already been proven in terms of developing.
And this is a good example where you're coupling the workforce with robotics, not supplanting jobs. All right. So if there's a large need to make ships, for example, and you're doing it manually for the plates, and it takes a whole day versus 5 minutes, your throughput for the number of ships that you can build are much lower versus using the robot. But the thing is that you still need human beings to manage, program, set up these robots. And that way, instead of making only one ship a year, maybe you make 10 or 20 ships a year, because you're taking out some of the bottlenecks of manufacturing. And there's obviously a need to make more ships. So why don't we take more market share instead of losing market share? Why shouldn't we say, it's our mission in the United States to reduce the market share of the Chinese in shipbuilding? And we take it. And we can do that. We, for sure, 100%. This is a US DNA, USA DNA right here. And all those kids, think about it, all those kids out there that can't find jobs after they get out of college, they could make 6 figures, low 6 figures, working in the shipyard. Do that for 10 years and you're fine. You're fine. You save your money, you're fine. You probably do way better off than what you thought you were going to do after college. Right here is the answer to most of the kids' problems. No, they don't want to do it. They would rather sit at home and watch TikTok.
Here.
Modular construction is another technique that could boost efficiency and help the U.S. shipyards compete.
Are you looking at vessels being partly made in Korea, then barged over and then assembled here? Or are they going to be fully assembled here in America?
Well, that kind of cooperative co-production model can speed up not just the building of ships, but the skills transfer that we need to build a workforce here in Philly.
Fincantieri's Wisconsin facilities employ a similar technique, where sections are barged to different facilities for final completion.
This is the seam where we join two modules together. What's really important about this seam is, forward of this seam, that forward bow section was built at our sister yard across the bay. While they were building the forward section, we were building the aft section. It's almost like taking Lego pieces that are perfect and accurate and bring them up so that they can become a full vessel.
Another thing holding back shipyards, a resilient supply chain.
We can do everything we want within our fences and with our yard, but the reality is for every ship we're building, somebody has got to also be helping to provide cables, steel, nuts and bolts, everything that goes into that ship.
You need the industrial base that can produce fasteners, that can produce nuts, that can produce the rivets, the little
So this
things.
is the tier 1 supply chain. And when you have a more robust tier 1 supply chain, guess what? You'll have a better economic cluster.
The ship that you need in the millions.
And building up that supply chain could be crucial as the U.S. faces challenges on several fronts globally, including from both China and Russia. The Coast Guard's efforts to patrol the Arctic and Antarctic regions is 6 years behind schedule and $1 billion over budget. And the U.S. only has 3 icebreakers on its roster for that endeavor, compared with Russia's 41 icebreakers and China, who is heavily investing in its program. The U.S. Navy also has a goal of building 381 ships over the next 3 decades that will require up to $36 billion, a qualified workforce, and shipyards able to do so.
When you look out, say, 20 years, how would you describe U.S. shipbuilding?
My intent is for us to set out as many efforts as possible to get us there. 20 years is enough of the time to get us up there to be in the forefront of shipbuilding.
The ability is here to bring shipbuilding back. What we want to do is bring the investment, bring the technology, bring the skills, the know-how that Korea has built up over decades, and press fast forward on that here in America.
The United States can do it. There's no doubt about it. And all it takes is the will. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take my advice and stack these supplements the way I'm stacking them to slow down the aging process and to boost up your immune system. The complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. It's easy to digest. Take this every day so your cells are performing properly. And also take the probiotic. You can get it in the powdered form or in the veggie cap form on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is the powdered form, but you take it every day. What this will do is improve your gut biome. And when you improve your gut biome, you're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better. You're going to have less inflammation at the gut level. You'll have better skin. You will also have a better immune system at the gut level. Your mucosal barrier will be improved. You'll have better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. Your metabolism will be better. And you'll be able to sleep more regularly. You'll reduce brain fog. You'll be able to concentrate better. It all starts at the gut level. In addition, when you have better sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. So please go to my store, get the complete multivitamin and the probiotic. That's the foundation to slow down the aging process. And because we're in the winter season, please go to my store and get the drops. You can get it in blueberry, honey and lemon, and cherry. Very high quality structural enamel silver drops. If you're not feeling well, if you have that throat irritation, take them right away, mitigate the problem. If you're around someone that happens to not be feeling well, guess what? Take them prophylactically. Get a few bags for your household and for work. You never know when you need it, but take them right away. They're very high quality, made from structural enamel silver. Perfect for the winter season, and the allergy season. So please go to my store and get the drops. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Now we're going to go to Cardinal Dolan being interviewed on Fox News. Now, for the ones that don't know, Cardinal Dolan is stepping down. There's going to be a new archbishop. This is very big in New York, so we're going to dive into this story here.
Timothy Cardinal Dolan, passing the torch as leader of the Archdiocese of New York after nearly 17 wonderful years. He is beloved by this city. He is a voice of compassion, conviction, deep love for Jesus, a joyful warrior for Christ, a sharp wit, and his humor and his wit at times cut tension and built bridges from the highest office in the land to the poorest, to the most religiously and culturally diverse in this city in equal measure. He has excelled in the role that Pope John Paul II once called the Archbishop of the capital of the world. You are loved. You will be missed by many, many people here whose lives you have touched and will continue to touch, because we're going to keep you right here in New York City. Here's just a small slice of his enormous legacy and an introduction for his successor, Bishop Ronald Hicks. Watch.
I come before you in awe.
Coming to the stage this Friday, it's Ned's first team karaoke night. But he's wondering,
What if my flaky red plaques? I come before you in awe, and I admit some trepidation, knowing that I've got an awful lot to learn about you and about this dynamic local church. The second happiest memory, maybe I shouldn't say this, was in 1964 when the St. Louis Cardinals beat the New York Yankees in 7 games in the World Series. Those days are over, okay? Give our leader wisdom, for he is your servant, aware of his own weakness and brevity of life. If wisdom which comes not from you be not with him, he shall be held in no esteem. Send wisdom from heavens that she may be with him, that he may know your designs. Please, God, bless America. Please, mend her every flaw. We don't call him Holy Father for nothing. He's the father of our family. And there's a death in the family. And we're sad. The Sistine Chapel, you couldn't have produced it or choreographed it better. It's so fitting for this. As we look at the creation of man, as we look up, God the Father touching the finger of Adam. And you think of, there's the dignity of the human person, the sacredness of human life. And then as you look at the Last Judgment, you're thinking, we need to put things into perspective. This is what it's all about. Now, enjoy yourselves, you hear, but behave, all right, behave. If you get rowdy, I threaten to make you sit through the rerun of last year's speech by President Trump and watch the video from Kamala Harris. And if that just doesn't work, we'll turn on the mayoral debates, all right? The last week since I found out, I've gotten to know him, and I already love him and appreciate him and trust him. Is there sadness in my heart? Sure, because I love the Archdiocese of New York. That sadness is mitigated by the gift that this new Archbishop already is.
Well, we're honored to have Timothy Cardinal Dolan join us now.
Can we keep going with it?
I know, I couldn't believe me.
Those gracious words.
Oh, no, they,
How nice to be with
Oh,
you.
it's
We've been
wonderful.
here. I've been here almost 17 years, and you have been a big part of it. So it's
Well,
good to be with you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to talk to us today. Obviously, all the archbishops submit a resignation letter when you turn 75, which you did back in February. And the other day, that letter was accepted. So how did you make that transition, and how did you feel about it? What was your reaction?
Martha, so
Because this show, even though it's being recorded, their news does break. There's a breaking news right now. The U.S. has boarded a Panamanian flagged oil tanker near Venezuela, the third such incident this month. So we're going to be doing a video on the second tanker, but just minutes ago, a third tanker has been boarded.
Actually, so on February 6th last year, when I turned this year, February 6th, I turned 75. Every bishop has to submit a letter of resignation to the Holy Father, and every bishop is accepted in this way. The Holy Father accepts your resignation. You will remain as Archbishop of New York until your successor's named. So in a way, the resignation, I knew the resignation was accepted last February, as every other bishop knows. I kind of lived in sort of like a perpetual advent, longing, waiting patiently for the appointment of my successor. And bingo, it came yesterday, and I am delighted. So how do you find it out? The Holy Father's representative of the United States, the Apostolic Nuncio, calls and says the Holy Father's appointing your successor. And I found that a couple days before you guys did. It wasn't too well kept a secret, but the leaks didn't come from me. But
and what kind of emotions did you have?
Well, so at first I was wondering who the new guy was, because I got to be honest with you, as I mentioned yesterday at the press conference, I really didn't know Archbishop Designate Ronald Hicks that well. I knew of him. I knew the reputation was grand. So that was my first thing. Secondly, I thought, well, I'm eager to meet him and get the transition going. And thirdly, I thought, as much as I had been looking forward to resignation, a bit more free time, a bit doing the things that I enjoy without some of the stuff that might be somewhat onerous as Archbishop. I have to admit a sadness in leaving as Archbishop of New York. I knew it was coming. I think that's a good thing, that I'm kind of somber about giving it up. But I'm at peace, and that, Martha, was really softened yesterday. Any trepidation, any kind of anxiety that I had when I got to know Archbishop Designate Hicks. Now, we got to know each other on the phone. We became phone buddies for the 5 or 6 days leading up to the announcement, as we were together for a couple hours a day on the phone. And even then, I said, this guy's the winner. And when he came in Wednesday night, and we stayed up till about midnight chatting, I said, this guy is humble. He's sincere. He loves our Lord and his church. He, too, is humble enough to say, as I did, I'm glad you played that clip, because when I came 17 years ago, he was humble enough to say, Tim, I'm a little nervous. I'm kind of anxious. Joliet, that's his home diocese, 500,000 Catholics. Here, I'm going to have 5 times as many. And I know the demands of New York, and I'm wondering if I'm up to it. And I said, Ron, I felt the same way 17 years ago. God's grace will provide. The magnificent people of this wide New York community, this archdiocese, you're gonna do swimmingly. And from what I read today with you professional journalists reporting, I think you hit a walk-off homer yesterday. So
I think of you coming from, born in St. Louis, Archbishop in Milwaukee. Then you came here, and when we watched that clip of you saying, I've got a lot to learn about New York, now I think the country sees you as a New Yorker, as sort of a consummate New Yorker. So, I mean, you made that transition. You embraced the city. As I said, you spent time at synagogues on October 7th. You have spent time with the new mayor, Mamdani. It's very interesting, because I read a quote from Mayor Bill de Blasio, who you also spent time with. And he said, if you're going to be mayor of the city, you better get to know Cardinal Dolan. So talk to me about what, becoming a New Yorker and understanding how to navigate the city has meant to
I
you.
am thrilled to hear you say, Martha, that I've become a New Yorker, because I genuinely feel that way. In fact, I'm quick to say, because many people think, look, you love St. Louis, you love your family, you're going to move back home. I said, this is kind of my home now. Yeah. I love New York.
Good.
So
Well,
I'm going to stay
glad
there.
to
So
hear that.
you ain't done with me yet.
Good.
So I'll be here. I'll be living in a parish. We're still working on that. I look forward to masses and confessions and baptisms and weddings and visiting parishes and schools and hospitals and prisons and nursing homes. All the stuff I relish doing, and I won't have to go to meetings. I won't have to balance a budget. I won't have to make personnel decisions. I'm kind of looking forward to it. And yes, I am a New Yorker.
And a Yankee fan. You have done so many things in this job. We're right around the corner for people across the country from St. Patrick's.
Yep.
And
And you show it every morning.
Yeah, I'm blessed to see it out my window there. The reason that it is this gorgeous original, you can see it, yeah, you can see the spires from the building. But the reason that it is this beautiful lighter color than it was when I was growing up, and what it looks like on the inside, is a $175 million restoration that you oversaw, all private donations. I mean, look at this gleaming. The first time I stepped in after the restoration, I cried. It was so phenomenal. And one of the things, you've done so many things in this city, the Inner City Scholarship Fund, which has raised just the other night alone tens of millions of dollars so that children in New York City can attend Catholic schools, hopefully in perpetuity, because of these donations and these partnerships that you have formed here. You also got the schools open during COVID so that kids did not have to stay home. It was a very insightful decision. Talk to me about what all those things have meant to you, what really, what is the most important to you, and maybe what you feel was something you wish you had more time for.
See, I like you. I like listening to you. You're on a winning streak here, Martha. Thank you for those gracious words. I'm glad you mentioned St. Patrick's Cathedral, America's Parish Church. When I got here, I can't take credit for the plans. My predecessor, Cardinal Edward Egan, to whom I'm immensely grateful, he had kind of the plan started. One of the first things he said to me is, "Sorry, I'm laying this in your lap, but St. Patrick's Cathedral needs massive repair. It's going to take a lot of money." And I wasn't able to do it because of the visit of Benedict. We couldn't have Pope Benedict. We couldn't have it torn up. So I went into it, and thanks for mentioning that, because St. Patrick's Cathedral is the soul of, I don't think not just Catholics say that, but people say that. It's smack dab in the middle of what people call the capital of the world. And it reminds us of the divine. As we look at it, we're immediately transfigured up to God and His grace and His mercy. So you said you cried when you went in the first time after the restoration? I cried when I saw the bill, but thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. We had a lot of great people led by Ken Langone and a good number of other people, including a lot of non-Catholics. We couldn't have done it without Jewish benefaction. We couldn't have done it without the business leaders of any other or no faith at all. And it was a real community endeavor because everybody said to me, "We love St. Patrick's." Now, Martha, to get on to what you were asking me about, we're talking about the brick and mortar church building, sort of the church with a capital C. My main goal is the church with a capital C, the living, breathing body of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The cathedral represents that. But so thanks for bringing up the schools. Thanks for bringing up the hospitals. Thanks for bringing up the charities. Thanks for bringing up the heart and soul of our people, because that's really, Jesus dwells there as well. And my real ministry is not just repairing buildings, but bringing the repair and the renewal that our Lord and Savior came to bring that first Christmas to the hearts and souls of people. And I hope I've been able to do that. I walked into a humming archdiocese. I hope I'm leaving Archbishop Designate Hicks a well-oiled, enterprise on behalf of the Lord. And it's magnificent. It's magnificent. Disappointments, yeah. As I look back, when you think, Martha, of the heartbreak of having to make a terribly neuralgic decision to close a school or a parish, that breaks my heart. That breaks the heart of the people. When you hear sometimes dismal statistics about not enough priests, about fewer people coming to church, although thanks be to God, as you've reported, that's turning around. When you hear about people disaffected with the church, when you hear even about vocations to the sacrament of marriage going down, only 50% of our Catholic young people get married. All those things, like that would be an ongoing agenda that sometimes I think, Dolan, you haven't done much about that. I'm just happy to hear people like you gracious enough to point out some of the few good things that I've done.
Thanks. I ask you about that because since 1970, the number of people becoming priests has dropped by 50%. Yep. Two different people that I interacted with this morning said to me, ask Cardinal Dolan whether he would support men marrying and being priests in order to try to solve that problem. What do you think about that? Or do you think there's another way to fix this problem? There's not enough priests, 300 parishes and 18 people studying right
Yeah,
now in New York.
a lot of people say that, and they got a point because the discipline of celibacy, meaning a priest would promise not to take a wife because the church, his people, become his wife and his kids. That's many people say, oh, that's an impediment to priestly vocations. Can we be open to an alteration of that? Yes, because that doesn't come from God. That's a church imposed discipline that could be altered. Would it help? Well, the statistics tell us that most religions in the world have married clergy, and they're struggling as well. So would it help? It would bring challenges of its own. Marriage isn't the answer to everything, is it? As you married people know, there's tensions and there's challenges there, and even that noble vocation is suffering a shortage. I don't know if that would be a magic answer. Would it help? Could be. Sometimes the statistics say that. Should the church be open to that? The different popes have said that's a decision that merits some controversy. We would not ever want to move into that without a lot of prudence and a lot of prayer. So,
His Eminence, Cardinal Dolan, wonderful to have you here, and so glad to know that you will be in the Life of New York for.
All right, so we're going to go to the second tanker that was seized by the United States. There is a third tanker that just happened about half an hour ago. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C and magnesium. This will boost up your immune system, help with brain function and your skin. And magnesium and zinc helps with brain function and boosts up your immune system. You can take them together, especially during the winter season. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening. But your normal dosage, if you're feeling okay, take it once a day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium will also help the efficacy of vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 will help to absorb calcium. When you're doing resistance training, it'll help to build bone density. Vitamin D3 helps cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. That's why it's so important to take it during the winter season. And vitamin D3 will help with your cardiovascular health. Why? Because it'll help to pull some of that calcium depositing around plaque, reduce the number of calcium deposits forming. And when you do that, you're going to have a better cardiovascular flow. So please go to my store. Make sure you get the vitamin D3. Take it every day. Get the vitamin C and magnesium and zinc. This is a great stack. If you spend $100 or more, get a free gift until supplies last. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount number 5. You get $5 off any order. Okay.
Seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela for the second time in less than 2 weeks. In a post on social media, U.S. Secretary for Homeland Security said the vessel was carrying sanctioned oil used to fund narco-terrorism. And it comes 10 days after the U.S. seized the Venezuelan oil tanker that's called the Skipper. Trump has announced a blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving the country. He's also refused to rule out the prospect of war with Venezuela amid a large U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, including the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier. But the Brazilian president, Lula da Silva, has warned that U.S. military action in Venezuela would spark a humanitarian catastrophe. Well, one regional leader who openly supports U.S. military action is Javier Milei, the president of Argentina.
Argentina welcomes the pressure from the United States and Donald Trump to liberate the Venezuelan people. The time for a timid approach on this matter has run out.
Ana Vanessa Herrero is a Venezuelan investigative journalist.
This is the second time we've seen them respond so fast. The first one was when the first vessel was taken, and they said, and I quote, "This act will not go unpunished." They say that they will file a complaint against the United States, and they will file it to the UN, to the UN Security Council, and other instances. They didn't specify which ones. But the interesting thing here is that they are avoiding any kind of military action against the United States, even though all the threats are pointing in that way, in the military action. But Venezuela is not going for that. They actually said in this statement today that they were going to act legally. They were going to take legal actions. And that's very interesting. We've seen how the Venezuelan government hasn't responded against the United States, not only with this, with the seizure of the vessels, but also planes coming so near the Venezuelan airspace. And it's a very interesting angle to see how they are avoiding any kind of military action against. We know also that the vessel was going to China, and some reports claim that it was carrying up to 2 million barrels, which is an absolute hit straight to the Venezuelan economy and to the Venezuelan government. And we are seeing panic in the streets after the first vessel was seized, and now more than ever, what we're looking at, how it translates in Venezuela, is people lining up to fill up their cars with gas. Because in the past, when something like this happened, or when the oil industry was being under attack or affected in some way, people thought, and it actually translated that way, that they were going to run low on gas. And that affects every single line of life in Venezuela. So what we're looking at now is people lining up for hours, panicking, although local authorities have said that there's no need to panic. There's not going to be a gas shortage, at least not yet, because that is not the target that the United States is after.
No turning back. Alrighty. What I want to do is I want to switch over to listen in on Britain's demographic apocalypse. Let's just listen to this podcaster here.
Hello, I'm Paul Weston. Now, we are living through the first moment in 2,000 years.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button.
Hello, I'm Paul Weston. Now, we are living through the first moment in 2,000 years when the entire Western edifice, its people, its laws, liberties, arts, science, democracy, humour, music, everything that took 20 centuries of blood and genius to build could be dismantled within just 1/4 of the lifespan of a single generation. So can the democratic process halt our impending slide into near extinction? So, for example, what will Farage do, assuming he's elected, about the following? Between 1997 and 2025, approximately 18 million migrants came to Britain, and the majority of them were aged 20 to 30. And they joined an existing 12 million earlier immigrants and their second and third generations born here, and the majority of whom are also young. And a further 5 million more migrants are expected to enter Britain over the next 5 to 7 years, the majority of them young. So the total today is 30 million migrants. By 2032, 35 million. How many young white British aged 20 to 30 actually exist on this sector dial? And the answer is just 5 million, or 67% of the purported total population in that age demographic. And this percentage is dropping fast via a combination of young white British immigration and below replacement level birth rates, which lead combined to a halving of tomorrow's generation. We see this in glaring reality through the astonishing.
Now think about what happened with Japan. Birth rates are going down, an aging population. It's not as of a robust economy as it was in the 70s and the 80s. It's a big problem. See, if you don't have God, country, and family, when you have a society that's not willing to have kids and grow the population, you're in decline. Now, developed nations, they try to solve that problem by just having more immigration. But there's a problem to that. If you have too much immigration coming from cultures that are different than yours, then the assimilation most likely will be slowed down, and there will be a change of the host country's culture. If you have a hot bathtub and you're filling it with a lot of cold water, guess what? That hot bathtub turns cold quickly. All right? That's the same idea here. So the flow of different cultures into your society need to be really appreciated, even if your surface goal is to just increase the population numbers in the country. It's also the culture. That's a really important piece to it. Now, why is it that developed nations need to import immigrants? It's because the cost of living is too expensive. When we have God, country, and family, and we reduce our desires for extravagance, we'll live in a society that is more malleable for a family of four, or let's say, where the father is working or the mother is working and one of the parents stay at home, right? But if we don't do that, and we assume that there's going to be a dual income, and then all of a sudden the home prices start to get more expensive, the cars get more expensive. So we're going to need to actually have to slow down our actual spending. We have to be more of less of a consuming nation and more of a producing nation. We've kind of run the whole yard on this in terms of dual income. And that dual income, they don't have kids, the cost of living is too expensive. Well, you have to pull it back. There has to be some sort of an adjustment. All right. Feminism, and having rights for women, it was a good thing in general. But the thing is that women, especially in the 80s and especially in the early 90s, had this mindset that they can just postpone marriage, postpone kids, postpone. And eventually what happens is their ovaries dry out. Or if they do have a kid, they are increasing the chances of a Down syndrome. And family creation starts to decline. So it's a combination of the cost of living and societal norms saying that it's okay to just postpone. Postpone family creation should be in your 20s, really. Mid 20s, early, mid, and late 20s. That's when it should happen. All right, for a healthy society, but it's not. In Japan, it's not happening. All right, so what you're going to have is you're going to have a society that's declining. You're going to have a society that it won't have economic prowess. You will have a society that won't even have military prowess. The United States, there's a lot of people that want to come to the United States and live the American dream, whatever that means. But we need to be cognizant that the velocity of flow and where these immigrants are coming from that demographic is really important to understand what sort of cultural norms will change over time. If you have unfettered flow, you won't have America. You won't have the United States. You won't have the freedoms. You won't have the norms. It will be totally different. So it's really important, getting back to the point here, that developed nations are having problems with family creation. A big reason why is because of the cost of living. It's too costly. But then you have all these other social norms saying it's okay to just wait. It's okay, and then eventually it's too late. But I would say the biggest driver is cost. It seems to be the biggest driver is cost in Japan. Many people can't find good paying jobs now in Japan, right? And so family creation doesn't happen. If you watch people that are from Asian countries that are having to decline in birth rates, they move to the United States. What happens? They have birth. They increase their birth rates because they have more opportunity. They have more opportunity compared to where they left. So it's all relative. But if you look at the people that are having kids in the United States, they're immigrants. They're not, many of them aren't born here. The parents that were born in the United States that are middle class or upper middle class, they're not having kids. It's the immigrants that are in the middle class or upper middle class that are having kids. But also lower class too. But the lower class usually have kids no matter what. But this demographic they're talking about is the cost of living. Now, who benefited from having women work? Was it the family unit? Did they really benefit from it? Maybe short term, there was more income, but all of a sudden, everything started to get more expensive. Cars became more expensive once the female started working. Once the female started working, home prices started to get more expensive. So it's a big problem.
British birth rates, which as recently as 1997 stood at approximately 94% of total births. By 2020, this had dropped to 68%. By 2021 to 67%, 2022 to 66%, 2023 to 55%, 2024 to 51%, and are projected to fall even further at an ever-increasing rate to just 25%, somewhere between 2035 to 2040. Why such a sudden and accelerating drop, particularly over the last couple of years? And the answer is that Britain saw a massive rise in gross immigration over the last 4 years, amounting to an astonishing 4 million, mostly young, and to put it brutally, of breeding and fighting age. And the last 4 years also saw an exodus of close to 1 million white British, mostly young, and also of breeding and fighting age. And remember that the total number of white British aged 20 to 30, according to the 2021 census, was only 5 million. So with a 1 million exodus between 2021 and 2025, this number is now just 4 million. Once the tipping point is reached, everything accelerates massively. And this is like the Hemingway character replying gradually, then suddenly, to the question of how he went bankrupt. It took decades for the Muslim birth rate to rise from 1% of total births in the 1970s and in Britain to close to 20% today. But having breached the tipping point, it doesn't take long to hit 40% and then 80%, especially so when the white British demographic is rapidly disappearing. Put simply, a Muslim couple will have, on average, 3.5 children before the mother is 21, whilst a white British couple will have just one child when the mother is in her mid-30s. Now, if you fast forward 42 years, assuming birth rates and motherhood ages remain the same, and you'll find that 100 Muslim couples produce 350 children and 1,255 grandchildren. And the white couple will produce just 50 children over the same 42-year period and 0 grandchildren. And when the grandchildren do finally arrive in 70 years' time, there will be only 25 of them. This is a racial and civilizational ending catastrophe. And the data I quoted about immigration uses gross immigration figures, not net, but they are true government figures. 18 million migrants really have arrived over the last couple of decades. And the lower net immigration figures take into account migrants who subsequently went home. So it might not be as bad as I portray, but a succession of British governments have no idea how many migrants subsequently left. They quite literally have no idea at all. Witness politicians like Rupert Lowe asking such questions of Home Office officials who splutter and stammer and tell him they don't have the data to hand, or the dog ate it, or they left it on the bus. So splitting hairs about the exact numbers is a complete waste of time. The figures are so huge, it makes little difference if they're XY percentage smaller. Even at the lowest net immigration level, they are civilizational ending today, right now. And let us not forget that a government boasting of lowering net immigration to 200,000 could actually be talking about a gross immigration figure of 900,000 African Islamic migrants, offset by the emigration of 700,000 native Brits. And this is why I refuse to utilize the deliberately disingenuous net immigration figures. So what do you intend to do about this demographic apocalypse, Mr. Farage? I appreciate your thoughts on tax and other such things, but I cannot help but feel you're talking about mundane political issues in the face of our imminent racial and civilizational collapse is akin to Belgian politicians talking about tax issues in 1939 whilst completely ignoring the Panzer tanks rolling through the Ardennes forest en route to Belgian political headquarters. I would also ask the same question, re what do they intend to do about it, of King Charles, Supreme Military Commander and sworn defender of the realm, along with his 3 military chiefs, General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, Royal Navy, Air Chief Marshal Harvey Smythe, Royal Air Force, and General Sir Charles Rowland Walker, British Army. And if they have no plans at all, are they not bona fide traitors betraying the sacrifice of every single British soldier, sailor, and airman who died defending the realm over the last 1,500 years?
All right. Like I said, demographics are changing in developed nations, and you have to pay attention to the cost of living, the overshot of feminism, and the movement, the magnitude of immigration, especially from certain types of cultures. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorants that I have. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. These deodorants are for males or females. It will help, not just as a deodorant, but to help to detoxify your body. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, has no aluminum, no baking soda, very high quality deodorants. And again, it helps to detoxify your body. And when you do that, when you detoxify your body regularly, your immune system and endocrine system perform better. Clarity factor gets rid of that brain fog, allows you to concentrate. You take this every day, and you're going to improve the positive neuroplasticity, so you're thinking faster and you have better memory. This is a very powerful neurostack you should be taking every day. Very important. And if you have to do a lot of cognitive function, you know, like an engineer, or you're in school or wherever, take it twice a day. Take it in the morning and take it mid-afternoon. but most people, you can just take it once a day. Omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular health. It helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels so your lipid profile is better. In addition, it helps to bring down inflammation. When you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. And omega-3 helps to reduce the stickiness of your red blood cells. So please go to my store, get the omega-3, take it every day. Super important. So a great stack. The omega-3 to help with your cardiovascular health, clarity factor to help with your brain function, and the deodorants to detoxify your body, and you'll smell good. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen in on Taiwan looks safe, but China is putting Japan at risk.
At first glance, Taiwan appears to remain the main focus of China's military pressure in East Asia. Warplanes cross the median line, naval patrols circle the island, and Chinese officials repeat that reunification is inevitable. But beneath that familiar picture, a quieter and more dangerous shift is unfolding. Increasingly, the pressure is moving outward, and Japan is finding itself closer to the edge than many realize. This is not because Taiwan has suddenly become safe. The island still lives under constant military pressure, and its leaders openly acknowledge that the risk of escalation remains. But Taiwan's situation is structured around deterrence that is already understood by all sides. The lines are tense, but they are also familiar. Japan's situation is different. What is emerging around Japan is not a single, clearly defined flashpoint, but a growing number of unpredictable encounters that carry a higher risk of miscalculation. Over recent months, Chinese military activity around Japan has intensified in ways that go beyond symbolic signaling. Japanese defense officials have publicly described close encounters between Chinese and Japanese aircraft in the skies near Okinawa and the southwestern islands. These are not distant drills. They are moments where pilots are operating within close proximity, reacting in real time with little margin for error. One such incident drew particular concern when Japanese authorities said Chinese aircraft directed fire control radar at Japanese planes, an action widely regarded by pilots as a step that can precede the use of weapons. Japan's response has been measured but unusually direct. Officials emphasized that such actions go beyond what is safe or necessary and warned that continued behavior of this kind increases the risk of a serious accident. The choice of words mattered. This was not simply diplomatic language. It was a signal that Japan now views these encounters as a safety threat, not just a political dispute. China rejected Japan's account and accused Japanese aircraft of approaching and interfering with Chinese naval operations during carrier-based training. That response followed a familiar pattern, with both sides presenting sharply different versions of the same events. But the disagreement itself underscores the problem. When two militaries operating at close range cannot agree on basic facts, the space for misunderstanding widens rapidly. What makes Japan particularly vulnerable is geography. The chain of islands stretching from Kyushu through Okinawa sits directly alongside key maritime routes that Chinese naval forces use to access the Pacific Ocean. The Miyako Strait, in particular, has become a focal point for Chinese carrier movements and long-range patrols. Every time a Chinese carrier group transits that corridor, Japan tracks it. Every time Japan tracks it, Beijing accuses Tokyo of provocation. This cycle repeats with increasing frequency. Taiwan's situation, by contrast, is defined by a single axis of tension across the Taiwan Strait. It is dangerous, but it is also predictable. Japan's exposure is broader. Tension appears in the airspace near Okinawa, at sea around disputed islands, and in political disputes tied to Taiwan's security. Instead of one front, Japan is facing several overlapping pressure points. Politics has played a critical role in intensifying this pressure. Japan's leadership has spoken more openly than in the past about the implications of a Taiwan contingency for Japan's own security. From Tokyo's perspective, this reflects reality. Any conflict involving Taiwan would have direct consequences for Japan, including threats to sea lanes and the presence of US forces stationed on Japanese territory. From Beijing's perspective, however, such statements cross a red line. Chinese officials argue that Japan is violating political commitments and interfering in China's internal affairs. These disagreements have not remained abstract. China has repeatedly demanded that Japanese leaders retract Taiwan-related remarks, framing them as unacceptable and dangerous. In some cases, Beijing has gone further, imposing countermeasures against individual Japanese figures connected to defense and security policy. The message is unmistakable. Discussing Taiwan openly carries costs. This political pressure coincides with a broader regional escalation. China's military modernization continues at a rapid pace, and new capabilities are being deployed more frequently and more visibly. The recent transit of China's newest aircraft carrier through the Taiwan Strait and surrounding waters was closely watched not only in Taipei, but also in Tokyo. For Japan, the carrier's movements were another reminder that Chinese power projection is no longer limited to distant exercises. It is operating routinely near Japanese territory. At the same time, the United States has reaffirmed its security commitments to Japan and criticized actions that increase the risk of conflict, including unsafe aerial encounters. That support strengthens deterrence, but it also places Japan more firmly at the center of great power competition. Any incident involving Japanese forces now carries the potential to draw in Washington, raising the stakes of even minor confrontations. This is where the contrast with Taiwan becomes especially important. Taiwan is already treated by Beijing as the central issue. Its status is the subject of long-standing doctrine, planning, and signaling. Japan, however, is being drawn into the equation more forcefully, not because it seeks confrontation, but because its security concerns overlap with Taiwan's geography. In Beijing's eyes, Japan's increasing willingness to speak openly about Taiwan suggests a shift from quiet caution to strategic alignment. For Japan, the danger lies not in deliberate escalation, but in unintended escalation. The region is now crowded with military platforms operating at high tempo. Fighters scramble more often. Naval vessels shadow each other more closely. Radar systems operate continuously. In such an environment...
All right. I'm going to switch over to Taiwan talks. Japan, China pushes the Roku independence as it claims. What's the rest of the title here? It claims Okinawa. This is going to go into a little bit more depth of what is talking here. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Goodnight Formula. This will help you to get into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep. So you are consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and you're well rested. Sleep deprivation chronically can lead to early onset of dementia. You want to get proper sleep so you're consolidating memory and you're detoxifying your central nervous system. And with good sleep, you're slowing down the aging process. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Please go to my store and get the Goodnight Formula. Take it every night, slow down the aging process, and improve your brain function. If you're 40 years of age or older, get the vitamin B complex. This is going to help to improve the health of your mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins helps the electron transport chain to produce the ATP that you need so you have more energy. Vitamin B complex also helps with your cellular metabolism, so your tissues will perform better, your cells will perform better. And vitamin B complex can protect your neurons because it has vitamin B12. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you save some money, save $5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Great stack here. Brain function, and to help slow down the aging process and get good sleep, get the Goodnight Formula. To help with your cellular metabolism and protect your neurons and build up more energy, get the vitamin B complex.
China has launched one of its most aggressive narrative campaigns against Japan in years, accusing Tokyo of being a military threat to Beijing, reviving Japan's wartime militarism, and even pushing the idea that Japan's southernmost prefecture of Okinawa should be independent. Is this all China's spontaneous response to remarks made by Takaichi Sanai in the Diet on November 17th? Or is Beijing's rhetoric part of long-standing propaganda? It now has the opportunity to amplify and internationalize aggressively. In today's show, we're focusing on why China is promoting Okinawan independence at the same time as secretly claiming the islands for itself. And how does all of this connect to Taiwan, the US-Japan alliance, and to the Indo-Pacific balance of power? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by Peter Mattis, the Jamestown Foundation President, former US Congressional Executive Commission on China Deputy Staff Director, and Lai Yizong, Prospect Foundation President. Peter, welcome to Taiwan Talks for the first time.
Thank you for having me.
And President Lai, welcome back.
Thank you.
So Peter, let me start with you first. So every time China has a rift with Japan, it launches this narrative war. Is anything different this time?
I think if anything, it's that it is strong, it is passionate, it is over the top, as it always is. But this seems particularly nasty with the language of chopping off her head with respect to the prime minister. And it's really like the kind of distasteful wolf warrior diplomacy that was there during COVID, directed toward the Swedes, toward the Czechs, towards many others.
And President Lai, China has tried to tie this very much to Taiwan's security. Is this the reason why it is more vicious, as Peter said?
I think if it's just about Taiwan security, then China does not have to go to this far. Because, first of all, the way that the Prime Minister Takaichi said is about circumstances. And Japan probably need to dispatch its self-defense force to react to something, but never mention anything about defending Taiwan. The way China is doing this is over the top and basically is doing something else. So I believe that there's some bigger agenda in this, rather than just simply a personal hatred toward Takaichi.
Yeah, and Peter, if we can now focus on the Okinawan independence campaign, which is being pushed by China, why is it the centerpiece to their information campaign?
Because the centerpiece of U.S. projection power in East Asia comes through the U.S.-Japan alliance, right? If there isn't a U.S.-Japan alliance, then there's no real way for the U.S. to protect Taiwan, to assist Taiwan, to work with the South Koreans, and frankly, do almost anything else in the South China Sea or the East China Sea. So this really is a core key piece of it. And when you're looking at how Beijing sees its own power, right, they feel like they are stronger. They're probably contesting for number one in the world in terms of comprehensive national power, as they put it. And they are preparing for war with Taiwan. So this kind of urgency, this kind of situation means that they want this to go forward, right? They've been involved in the Ryukyu independence movement for years. And you can't say that this is necessarily new. It's probably new in terms of how specific they are being and how open they are being about it, rather than keeping it relatively quiet or relatively local. Because there's so many bases, U.S. bases in Okinawa, it's in some cases the centerpiece of the U.S.-Japan alliance. And if that doesn't work, if the Ryukyu Islands are out there, right, they're closer to Taiwan than people tend to think they are. Because we think of, it's so many hours of flight from Taiwan.
It's not just the location. It's also the radar capability. It's the defense capability. It's slowing down the blue navy of the Chinese. If those islands are lost, the United States loses hegemonic power in that region. It's super important. So it's not just the Japanese maintaining those islands. It's the alliance between the U.S. and the Japanese. I'm telling you, the big enchilada is this right here, what's going on in this region. And what I'm concerned about in the United States, especially in the podcast sphere, the America First mentality. Oh, don't worry about it. It's not, it's not our concern. Our lifestyle will radically change if those islands, Taiwan, are taken by China. Because what that does is it puts the archipelago of Alaska at risk. It puts Guam at risk. It puts Hawaii at risk.
Okay, but the Ryukyu has come all the way, very, very close, right? And that's why Taiwan is part of the first island chain. So in many respects, I think you have to look at it in this context of Beijing's concept of its own power, how they see the urgency of their own situation, and how they're trying to push and get ready for some sort of war in 2027, some sort of preparation. And then that this is really the key piece of whether or not the United States is able to be involved in any sort of conflict.
And this is why our Navy capability is really important, our shipyard capability, our manufacturing capability, us being able to procure energy and raw materials, rare earth metals, I should say. Super important. Why Venezuela is the first piece being moved on this chess game between the United States and China. We have to really focus on this. I've been saying this in 2020 that the big game here is this. This is it right here. And we need to be focused and we need to make sure that we're prepared. And I'm not so sure the Americans are really prepared.
Right. And President Lai, we showed the clip from China's state TV. They were criticizing the annexation of Ryukyu in 1879, the disappearance of kingdoms. But how sort of ironic is that, given China's own history of annexations and oppressions, and also its stance on separatism?
Yeah, I think that the China always selectively try to use any narrative they can have in history to justify their positions. And in this case, it's about Okinawa. China would like to say that the Okinawa during the Ming Dynasty, like this around the 14th century, is a tributary state to China. But that basically means that Okinawa is paying something in order to gain the Chinese recognition not to invade Okinawa. That's the whole idea. If you're talking about it being a tributary state and your sovereignty is under somebody else, then how about the Song Dynasty at that time? China at that time actually signed a treaty with the Liao, another kingdom Liao, and in that treaty, Song actually annually gave them something in order to make a peace with Liao, and then the Liao also become a brother, probably older brother, and Song is a younger brother, or the vice versa, whatever. But so that if the Chinese assertion about Okinawa is justified, then how about during the much earlier? And then China basically is a subservient to the countries. And how would you explain that?
Right. So you're saying it doesn't confer sovereignty. Yeah. Obviously, there's no administrative control. So that argument is weak. Okay, let's now go to the second question. Japan's Sankei Shimbun reports there are more than 40,000 posts on China's social media platform Little Red Book on the so-called undetermined status of Okinawa or Ryukyu, the name of the archipelago kingdom before annexation by Imperial Japan in 1879. But another narrative has emerged, which is China's own claim to Okinawa. It's based on this, as the Global Times says. From 1372, the Ming Dynasty formally established a tributary relationship with the Ryukyu kingdom. Ryukyu acknowledged Chinese imperial authority and followed the Chinese calendar. The Chinese also say this.
The word Ryukyu comes from the Chinese word liuqiu, meaning giant dragon.
And in June 2023, the People's Daily reports Xi Jinping visited the China National Archives, where the staff tell him this serves an important political function, the Ming Dynasty manuscript of the Shiliao Lu record of the mission to Ryukyu. It is an early work that records the Diaoyu Islands and their affiliated islands as belonging to China's territory. Then Xi responds with this. I knew when I was working in Fuzhou that Fuzhou has Ryukyu halls and Ryukyu tombs, and that it has deep historical ties with Ryukyu. At that time, there were also 36 Fujian clans who entered Ryukyu. And now, Beijing claims that Okinawa should have been returned to China after World War II based on the 1943 Cairo Declaration However, Cairo was a non-legal, non-binding communique drafted before the war had ended. In contrast, the legally binding 1951 San Francisco Peace Treaty superseded Cairo. You can see here, there is no mention of Okinawa or Ryukyu being given up by Japan under Article 2 of territory. However, in Article 3, it deals with the administration of Ryukyu like this. Japan will concur in any proposal of the US to the UN to place under its trusteeship system with the US as a sole administering authority, Nansei Shoto south of 29 north latitude, including the Ryukyu Islands and the Daito Islands. So, Peter, let me come to you. So the US then handed back administration of Ryukyu or Okinawa in 1972. So what is the basis for China's claim?
I don't believe there's any basis for Beijing's claims, because you can look at the historical piece of it and look at the different dynasties, and frankly, like who belongs to who, right? The Yuanchao is not exactly a Chinese dynasty. The Qing dynasty is not a Chinese dynasty, right? And in some cases, these, like the Song dynasty in the south, covered only a very small part of modern China today, or the PRC today. So to kind of make these historical claims and to shift it as much as they have, like I believe this is basically the party's continuing use of propaganda to try to shape people's thinking, to try to invent claims. And if there's one thing that we know about the Chinese Communist Party, it's that they know how to change history, right? There's an old joke among historians that, for Marxist-Leninists, the future is certain, it's only the past that changes.
Okay, and President Lai, the use of the Cairo Declaration, the Chinese do keep pointing to this. They also point to, this 30 or 29 degrees north latitude, because they say that, it says very clearly that Okinawa, essentially, which sits below that, is not to be controlled by Japan.
Well, the earlier what China used the Cairo Declaration is about that how China can rightfully own Taiwan. Due to the fact that Cairo Declaration talks about that how the Formosa Taiwan should return to the Republic of China, and the PRC assertion is that in 1949, PRC already succeeds the ROC regime, so become the rightful representative of China, and thus Taiwan returned to ROC, and then that means that it returned to PRC. So that end up the issues. And then now the China sort of upped the ante, so started to argue that even Okinawa, through whether the Cairo Declaration or Potsdam Declaration, should be part of China. I would say that this is sort of the far-fetched and also the arbitrary usage of anything they can have to justify their causes. And I would say that the whole idea is to get rid of the U.S. bases away from the Okinawa, and completely destroy the U.S.-Japan alliances, so that not just about Taiwan, the U.S.-Japan won't be able to come to help, but also should the China successfully separate the U.S. from Japan, and then China will be able to very easily dominate the whole East Asia, and then to push forward all the way to Hawaii and force the United States to go back. So that basically is the historical and also so-called legal justification for their attack in their competition vis-a-vis the United States. And that is something that we need to know this very clearly.
And Peter, when it comes to Okinawans themselves and whether they seek independence, so there's varying results from polls over the past 10 years, from a few percent to 8% seeking independence, and a much larger number, 20%, wanting greater autonomy. So, is there a major independence movement then? If we look at those figures, do we have any clear proof? What is Beijing doing here, amplifying a minority view?
I think you've hit it exactly right. There's not a strong movement. It's a set of fringe sort of people inside the Okinawan populace that are looking for something different. And in some ways there is a natural give and take that should be there between Okinawa and Japan, right? But so most people are content with the arrangement and simply want to change the terms of kind of that sort of natural give and take of being a state within a federal sort of system, right? And that makes something that's pretty normal, pretty comfortable, but Beijing is trying to find whatever wedge it can to split the U.S.-Japan alliance for the reasons that President Lai has just said. Right? This is one of those things where if the U.S.-Japan alliance breaks, the whole security architecture, the whole sort of order such as it exists in East Asia starts to change dramatically because there's no substitute for this alliance.
And is there also the sense of Beijing exploiting sort of this colonial exploitation narrative, especially with the U.S. forces being there?
Well, I mean, there's a huge amount of irony because, if you look through Chinese history, and because they say they don't interfere, they don't conquer, they don't do things, but the dynasties that the Chinese system is the most proud of, right, are the dynasties that expanded the empire, right? Like, do we really believe that it expanded peacefully in the Western Han, in the Ming, in the Qing, where they still make a basis of claims? There's a tremendous amount of irony because you can't look at the way that even the CCP today has treated the Xinjiang, so East Turkestan, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, its control, Tibet, even Inner Mongolia, and to some extent, frankly, even Chinese areas with the language policies and the ways that are sort of driving, people in Guangdong and Sichuan to reflect a party-centric view of what it means to be Chinese. Like, how is this not a colonial practice?
Okay. Now, when it comes to Beijing's narrative on Japan's militarism, however, the rhetoric has intensified.
Before we continue on this, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. This will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, help with your immune system and your endocrine system. And turmeric will help to bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines, bring down that inflammation, and soak up free radicals. Stack them together, and what this will do is help with your immune system and help reduce plaque formation at the vascular level and help bring down inflammation at your brain level so your neurons have less stress and will maintain its myelin sheath. Really important. Please go to my store, get the lignans and the turmeric.
So shifted from don't forget Japanese militarism to Japanese militarism is returning, from remember history to history is repeating. And yet in the last SES survey, it highlights that Japan remains the most trusted major power in Southeast Asia on 66.8%, with significant gains from 58.9% last year. We're now showing that trust factor measured across each ASEAN country, comparing Japan with China. For ASEAN as a whole, trust in Japan was 66% compared to China's 36%. In every single country case, Japan scores higher, even in pro-China countries like Cambodia, 73 to 41, Laos, 68 to 66, Malaysia, 57 to 31. President Lai, let me ask you, this is one authoritative survey, as we know, by the Institute for Southeast Asian Studies. China continually claims that it speaks for the region, even for the world, in fearing Japan's militarism. But actually, is there a different picture here?
I think definitely. If you look at the IC's survey every year, Japan, not just about this year, but traditionally Japan always occupy probably very number one, number two places among the Southeast Asian country with the most confidence and the most trustworthy country with. China always rank much lower, although Chinese has a much bigger economic influences. But the way that those countries look at them, it's not just about economically it's important, but politically it's threatening. So this is the kind of fear that many South Asian countries they have with China. So basically, the view about China and Japan is just the reverse about what China expected them to see Japan and see themselves. I would say that the issue also needs to look at in a way that when we look at the Japan itself, that about the histories, many South Asian countries way back, probably about 20 or 30 years ago already, when China wanted to launch the history attack against Japan, and they said, well, Japan is a peaceful country, and we've been receiving all the goodies from Japan since the end of World War II. We no longer see Japan in that way.
Right, Peter. So is it China that has this credibility, this trust problem, and also, despite what we said, is this still a very dangerous narrative?
Yes, China has a trust problem because you can look at all the agreements that the CCP has ever signed with anyone, right? You have something like 13 intellectual property agreements with the United States that have not changed any of the fact. You have, well, you could call it the first United Front and the second United Front with the Kuomintang, right? None of these agreements have ever been kept. The investment agreements that have been pushed with Pakistan, with Cambodia, with Laos, others, right? It's never been the full value, right? They've made big announcements for, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, and then maybe only 10% or 15% comes through. And a lot of it gets diverted in places like Laos and Cambodia into the pockets of local elites, right? So it is a trust problem. It is a dangerous narrative because ultimately we do get shaped by the things that we hear and we see every day.
If especially if it's repeated over.
Right, repeated over and over, right? If it's coming to you on your phone and it's coming to you on the radio and it's coming to you, when you're in a taxi getting around today, or if you're seeing it on television, like if you're seeing it in advertising, like these are all ways in which things get to you. And our cognitive wiring makes it so that we anchor on what we first hear. And if this is the first way that we hear something, or the first way that we understand something, our understanding tends to be anchored there, and it's harder to dislodge it. So the more that they can push it, the more that they can drown out other alternative voices, right? Because our attention is the choke point here. The more that they can fill our attention with this kind of narrative, the more we're likely to believe it, and the less we're likely to believe truth and facts elsewhere.
Right. And President Lai, this victim narrative, isn't it? So it's not that China, it's that Japan is the aggressor and China is the victim. China and Russia have both supported or invoked the obsolete sort of enemy state clause in the UN Charter. They want to portray Japan as the enemy, essentially, not just a defeated nation, but a nation that doesn't have the same rights as other countries in the international community. I wanted to tell you that several of our viewers took exception to us describing these clauses as obsolete. What's your view on that? I mean, obviously, we know there was the UNGA resolution in 1995. However, those clauses do still stand in the UN Charter.
I think that probably is a remnant after World War II, when the victory country, and they are still concerned about the Japan and Germany, and among others, they could just come back and then return to the militarism. So that is the causes that's been stayed there. And then, of course, whether some country would like to revoke, but there will be other countries like China that decided not to change anything. So I think that's why it had been staying there. But the issue that China suddenly took this on Japan, I think there's another angle that needs to be looked at very seriously. That is, China probably could have initially preempted against Japan. The reason is that during the letter to the United Nations Secretary General and asked the Secretary General to distribute to all nations, what China said is that Japan is doing about the possible assistance to Taiwan is the intervention on Chinese domestic affairs, and thus China has the right for the self-defense to attack Japan. So this is the first time I saw when China started bringing the Taiwan issue into the United Nations in the context about the probably foreign assistance. And China said that I'm going to attack any country, including Japan, who probably would, in my view, see as an intervention of domestic affairs. And that's about Taiwan. So I think this matter is not just about Japan, but also including the United States. If you decided to assist Taiwan, I will preemptively attack you. So that is something that China wants everyone to listen.
Right. But Peter, very quickly, I mean, what is the basis to that?
The simple fact of the matter is a war of aggression is illegal under the UN Charter. There are plenty of things that China does that are not actually acceptable under the UN Charter, not the least of which is some of the treatment of minorities, the treatment of language uses. So let's just remember that this is a very selective interpretation of what these things are, and it's the rule by law, not the rule of law, right? They're not looking at this as a principle; they're looking at it simply as a tool, to move state power. But the fact is, a war of aggression is illegal. Therefore, in some sense, it doesn't matter. Once we enter this world, right, it is a war, and it is something that will involve not just Taiwan, but Japan, the United States, the Philippines, probably Australia, and the impact is going to be felt worldwide simply because of the amount of container traffic, the sort of critical components, whether they come out of Taiwan or China, shipping will be disrupted. So I think we just have to accept the idea that this is not something that can be clean. It's not something that can be nice. And this is why it is important to deter aggression and why it is important to make Taiwan defensible and indigestible, if you will, if Beijing decided to attack.
Okay, to that point now, because the Japanese PM's remarks in the DAD on November 17th have been so misreported, let's go back to actual remarks. The Prime Minister was asked by opposition lawmaker Okada Katsuya, when asked about the possibility of a Chinese naval blockade of Taiwan, you said it might lead.
Let me just interject here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley will help to build up muscle, do some resistance training, but it'll also bring down inflammation so you're recovering quicker from your workout. It'll detoxify your body and soak up free radicals. When you are detoxifying your body, bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals regularly, you're helping your immune system, you're helping with brain function and your cardiovascular system. Super important to take every day. Please go to my store and get the Gladiator Barley. You can also stack it with Myotrol, or you can take them separately. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with that gene expression to build muscle and maintain it. This is super important if you're 40 years of age or older. Why? Because when you get older, your gene expression changes, your epigenetics change, and it's harder to gain muscle. This will help to gain that muscle if you do resistance training. It stacks really well with the Gladiator Barley. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will also benefit from taking Myotrol to build strength for your sport. If you're an athlete, a great protocol here is to take the Myotrol and the Gladiator Barley before your workout, and then you're doing your workout, and then you'll notice that you're gaining strength, more strength. But you don't have to be an athlete to benefit from this. Like I've been saying, we can take lessons learned from the research from geriatric medicine, sports medicine, and apply it to slowing down the aging process. And that's what exactly I have done. So please pay attention, get the Myotrol, get the Gladiator Barley, do some resistance training, and it'll slow down the aging process and build up muscle. But if you're an athlete, you will benefit from taking the Gladiator Barley and Myotrol and gain that strength that you need for your sport. Okay, let's continue with Taiwan.
A threatening situation. I don't intend to say it's absolutely impossible, but under what circumstances did you think it could reach that situation? Now she responds after several qualifying remarks. If a military attack occurs against Taiwan, including the naval blockade conducted by warships combined with other measures, the use of force could occur. For example, in the US military, if the US military intervenes to lift the blockade and other uses of force occur to prevent that, such scenarios are conceivable. In such cases, the situation that arises must be assessed comprehensively. President Lai, so you said right at the beginning of the show that Takaichi did not say Japan would defend Taiwan. This is an important distinction. Did she say that Japan would attack China?
No, she didn't. And she only said that under a lot of qualifiers, I don't remember how many, but first of all, the attack on Japan needs to happen, and then the attack on Japan, on the United States also needs to happen, and the United States dispatching forces. That needs to happen, and so that Japan would justify itself to define this as a survival threatening situation, and then Japan can dispatch its defense forces.
And there has to be no other means of repelling this situation.
That's right. And even for Japan to dispatch its forces, that does not mean Japan forces will enter the war. So the even after those qualifiers, you have military presence near this region, but you are not still engaging. So I do not know what China is making this fuss about.
And Peter, did she say that Taiwan was independent of China? I mean, why is it that her remarks have been so confused and so misrepresented, sort of globally, everywhere?
Well, I mean, the biggest reason they've been misrepresented is that it is in Beijing's interest to misrepresent, right? They want anything that connects Taiwan to the international community, whether it's through international organizations where Taiwan had been allowed to participate previously, whether it's sort of in naming conventions, whether it's in shipping companies, academic journals, all of these things are efforts to isolate Taiwan and to raise the costs for anyone to have any sort of real and genuine engagement with Taiwan. So I think it's a sense of change and a sense of empowerment, if you will, on the part of Xi Jinping and other CCP leaders, that they have to drive this pressure and they have an opportunity to drive this pressure while the United States and others are trying to keep things relatively calm, right? And so they can keep stirring up trouble. I think one of the things that's really important to mention about the use of force in this case, if the PRC creates a blockade around Taiwan, that is the use of force, right? A blockade is an act of war, right? So it doesn't matter if they shoot a weapon first, right? They've already committed the act, they've already started it. And anything that is taking place after that is going to be self-defense.
Okay, very good point to make. And very finally, President Lai, last 30 seconds, is the Okinawan campaign, is that tit for tat? Japan talks about Taiwan's security, in light of Japan's security, then China suddenly promotes Ryukyu independence.
I think that is China just used this opportunity and decided to advance this agenda. It's not about Takaichi's remarks. It's used the opportunity to really trying to launch a campaign to separate Okinawa from Japan.
Okay, we'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Peter Mountes and Lai Yuzhong, for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us.
All right. Bottom line is the United States needs to strengthen our allies in the region, and we need to make sure that we build up our Navy and our drone warfare to make sure that we hold the line and protect Taiwan. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. This is very high quality. Take it every day. This is very similar to the Gladiator barley, but it's not focused on building muscle. All right? It's great to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system and brain function. Why? Because by bringing down inflammation, you age slower. Resveratrol. This is something I've been taking for decades. This will help with youthful gene expression, get rid of cells that are in senescence, and also boost up your ATP levels because it's going to soak up free radicals, help with the health of your mitochondria. By taking this every day, you're actually slowing down the aging process, especially at the basal layer of your skin. Your skin's basal layer is where your new skin cells start to be produced. Well, if that's healthier, your skin is looking better. This is part of the reason why when people take resveratrol, they look younger. Now, this stacks really well with C60. Take it together, but you can also stack it with the barleys because of the synergistic effect of soaking up the free radicals, bringing down inflammation, and detoxifying. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. And digestive enzyme complex. This will help digest your proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids and reduce the load on your pancreas. This is super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from this because that will allow you to break up the carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids for your pre and your post-workout fuel source. This will reduce the stress on your digestive system. In addition, this has bromelain in it. It'll help to break up clots, and digestive enzyme complex has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. That's super important, especially this winter season with what's floating around. So please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, this is a student. I haven't seen this video, so let's figure out what this is. But it's from Fox Business. Student whistleblower sounds alarm with leak lectures.
Lesson plans from a freshman education course at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, drawing ire after a student whistleblower exposed the level of hard left ideology being taught.
The student shared 6 weeks of lectures with Fox News Digital, accusing the professor of
turning an intro course into an indoctrination seminar focused on, you guessed it, equity, identity, and oppression, amongst other practices.
Slides from the course, which is a requirement to graduate, mind you, show first-year education majors were trained to prioritize equity, LGBTQ plus issues, privileged identities, and preferred pronouns. Joining us now is AFPI Center for Education Opportunity Chair, Erica Donalds. Erica, going through this, what the student whistleblower reveals, it is political. This is not an education course. It is a course in liberal, left-wing Democrat politics.
Absolutely, and it's infuriating to the American people and especially the taxpayers that are paying for these courses, whether by student loans or the taxpayers of Illinois, because it is explicitly teaching what are supposed to be brand new teachers, not how to teach children to read, which is a crisis in this country, but instead how to be activists, and explicitly telling them that schools are part of a larger political system, that they should view themselves as activists. And all of the ideologies, as you stated, within that PowerPoint are radical left-wing ideologies that they are pushing on these students instead of teaching them the science of reading, how to teach rigorous math. And we know that brand new teachers coming out of our teacher colleges like this one are woefully unprepared. They say so themselves in survey after survey.
So, yeah, I mean, no wonder our kids aren't learning anything. If this is the stuff their teachers are focused on, they can't teach our kids what our kids need to know. But you're hitting something that's really important. When you look at the problems in college or even in our public education system, it's the people teaching the teachers that are replicating all this junk everywhere. So if you really want to make education better in America, the place you got to go are the requirements for teachers to teach, and the total ideologues who are running all this garbage through the system and teaching our teachers, Erica. How do you fix that?
Well, we have to reform teacher certification. That's one of the things we've been working on here in Florida and elsewhere. The teacher certification process requires students who might have majored in core subject areas like English or mathematics or history to go back and take courses from colleges of education for the purposes of this indoctrination and protectionism by the teachers' unions.
One thing I did want to add before we move on, that when you have courses and teachers or budding teachers who are instructed on privilege and what that means, you are teaching individuals to shame children for how they were born, and to make them feel bad about themselves and aspects of their being that they have no control over.
Yeah, we get mad about this happening in elementary schools and middle and high school, but these are still vulnerable young adults. They're looking to these programs to prepare them to be good teachers. Many of them enter the teaching profession because they want to help young people succeed. And so we need to get a handle on this immediately. It's wonderful that we're seeing this whistleblower, but this is why people are not trusting, especially parents, of our colleges of education and colleges in general.
So, Erica, Education Department Secretary Linda McMahon, basically trying to sort of dismantle the Department of Education because it hasn't done any good in, 4 or 5 decades, however long it's been around. And school groups are suing her because, they want their political power center in D.C. still. Is that going to work, or do you think she's actually going to be able to kind of basically put this thing to bed and start on a new page?
Well, let's be clear. The groups that are suing to stop these reforms are not parents or classroom teachers. They are the teachers' unions, progressive school district coalitions, advocacy groups. These groups have spent decades benefiting from the centralized federal control. These are the same groups that oppose school choice, they fight curriculum transparency, and they don't want accountability in our classrooms. They're not suing because students are thriving. They're suing because their power is being challenged. But Congress created the department, but nothing in the law says that it has to remain an untouched bureaucracy. Secretary McMahon is working very hard to deliver on the promise that President Trump made to dismantle the Department of Education sometimes moving some of these functions off to departments that it just makes more sense for them to handle, such as the Department of Treasury, the Labor Department, and HHS. And so I think she's doing a great job at delivering on that promise, and hopefully Congress will turn around and deliver as well to completely get rid of this department and the centralized control that the left has used against our students, frankly, for so long.
The doggone thing is younger than I am. Why can't they get rid of it?
And definitely not as effective.
I mean, I'm making a sort of, I'm making a joke, but that's the truth. It's not like it's, you know, embedded in our founding documents. Erica Donalds, is great to see you as always. Thank you, sir.
The education department, in its genesis from the Carter administration, has destroyed our children and their children and future generations. Why? Because they can't read, write, and do arithmetic. Yet they'll promote these crazy left-wing agendas. They'll promote, you know, all this DEI and LGBTQ and pronouns and all this stuff, the social justice crap. But they won't teach the kids on how to read. Abolish the Department of Education. It is a failure, complete failure. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. Read the label on my website. This will target your brain function, your musculature, your energy levels, rev up your metabolism, even help with your cardiovascular health. And over time, it will slow down the aging process. You'll notice that you're controlling your A1C levels. You'll notice that you'll have less inflammation, less aches and pains. You'll notice you recover quicker after a workout. Many people are noticing that if you had chronic migraines, they're diminished. This is a very, very high quality supplement that you should be taking every day to slow down the aging process. This is a month supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. But take it every day. And what you'll notice within 72 hours is you have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. So you can concentrate. You'll get rid of that brain fog. You'll have lots of energy. No spiking of energy. And you'll slow down the aging process. So within 72 hours of taking this, you'll notice that you have more energy, and you'll notice that your metabolism is faster. This is a great way to lose weight if you want to lose weight. And by taking this regularly, every day, you'll notice that you are improving your endocrine system, your immune system, and slowing down the aging process. This stacks really well with C60. Now let's talk about C60 for a second. C60, you can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut. You can get a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been doing this since 2016, every day a teaspoon. It has to be in a lipid, C60 has to be in a lipid, in an oil, for proper absorption. For best absorption, take them in the morning on an empty stomach. If you work out, take it before your workout so you recover quicker. This will soak up free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. And it's going to help to improve the health of your mitochondria. So you have more ATP, you have more energy, the cells perform better. You're bringing down stress. You're bringing down inflammation. You're soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, so you're reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL, so you're not building up plaque. And at the brain level, your neurons are healthier, producing better neurotransmitters, allowing for better connection, dendritic connections. So you're thinking faster and you have better memory. You take this every day, you're going to notice that you're younger. At the basal layer of your skin, especially if you stack it with the resveratrol, your basal layer is healthier, so your skin's healthier. Within 2 months of taking this, you're going to notice that you have more energy. Your endocrine system and your immune system will improve. You take this for a year, before and after, you do that comparison, you will look younger after taking this for a year. You will feel younger. You know why? Because you're soaking up free radicals and you're lowering the inflammation. You're improving all these different systems that I just mentioned, especially the immune system and the endocrine system. Now, when you stack it with stuff like Boomer Boost and turmeric and Max 35, the multivitamin and the probiotic, you're stacking it in a way where you're targeting all those different areas that are problematic for aging. When people age, they build up free radicals. Well, you want to bring those down. You want to soak those up. When you age, your immune system goes down. You want to boost up that immune system. When you age, your endocrine system isn't working as well. You want to boost that up. When you age, you have more inflammation. You want to keep that inflammation down. When you age, you start building up plaque. Well, you want to reduce the plaque and reduce further plaque buildup. If you stack what I just said, multivitamin, the probiotic, Max 35 or Cleanse, C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and Boomer Boost, that's a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process. Now, you can target some other things, too, on top of that. You can add in the omega-3s and the resveratrols, the structural nanosilver gels, the toothpaste. But the core to slowing down the aging process, multivitamin, the probiotic, Max 35 or Cleanse, C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the Boomer Boost. I just gave you the recipe to slow down aging. And if you do that on a regular basis, year after year after year, you will not need to be on pharmacopoeia, and your medical care costs when you're older will go down. Now, if you don't want to pay attention, that's your own damn fault. But if you don't invest in your body now, you're going to be paying later. And it's going to be a lot worse off. So I'm telling you how to stay off statins, how to stay off beta blockers, how to not have to be reliant on metformin. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the supplements that I take every day. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.